amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. And if that doesn't sound familiar, and it sounds like I'm showing off, you probably do know it as ALS, and you certainly know it as Lou Gehrig's disease. But my guest on What's It Like is somebody who really knows it on a personal basis. And my guest is Scott Sutherland, who is Vice President Market Manager, the boss here at KTAR.
Colleague.
And I had you in not because of the fact that you were conveniently located down the hall, but because of the fact that you're the only one I know that could answer the question. Yeah. What's it like growing up with a father who suffered from ALS?
It's tough. You know, it's interesting because it's a disease that really takes everything away, and it's a disease that many people know. And when you hear it, you know the baseball player, but you really don't know anything else about it. And the more that you know, the more it scares you, the more you find out about indignity, the more you find out about frustration. You know, you see, in my father's case, you see a guy who was vibrant, who was a practicing physician, who was athletic, who liked to be in the outdoors, and basically over time, you see everything that someone loves, all the things that someone loves taken away from them. And so it's, I was just talking about it with Mac and Gatos, who have been very involved in the Arizona chapter of the ALS Foundation. And I don't think there's a worse disease. Obviously I'm partial, but there's a worse disease that one can have.
When did you first, as a child, become aware that your dad was sick?
I was 14, and he noticed his limbs, or his fingers and his limbs were had odd sensations, and it was one of the things. He saw doctor after doctor, and they didn't know, and he ended up going to UCLA and ultimately getting the diagnosis, and basically finding out that he will lose all muscles. They will atrophy and be confined to a wheelchair and a nurse. But at 14, I don't think you don't really understand it. And then as it progresses, obviously, it's slow. At least in his case, it was.
Was there an announcement to the family? I mean, I'm trying to relate to what it's like on a daily basis, a personal basis, to see a parent who had all of those qualities that you were talking about, and then degeneratively waste away. Did he at some time, or did your mother say to the family, this is what he has and there's no cure?
It was more of a, as a doctor, I remember getting kind of the sterile version, the super technical, as a physician would give, and it was more, this is what we have. The hope is involved, so I think that's one thing where you mix in the reality, but I think if I had something, I think the message to the children would be, you want as much hope weaved in there as you can. So I remember that being a big part of it, but here is what it is, here's what we know, and here's what we are going to do about it.
How old were you when he died?
I was a sophomore in college, so I was 20. So it was the summer before my sophomore year in college. And so, one of those where it's honestly gets to the point where it's a blessing, because you can't do anything. I mean, it was you lose speech, you lose your, basically you have your wits, you're mentally, you're fully functional, but you're trapped.
Did it change you?
It did. It was it did. I think more now that I'm older and I have kids, you realize what you lost. I mean, I think when people they can't speak, I think how I am with my sons now, trying to be active and teaching them to become men, teaching my daughter to become a confident woman. I mean, all those things I think that you want, you don't really. It's much more difficult to get.
You're a Caucasian male. Your sons are Caucasian males.
Yeah.
Overwhelmingly, those are the people who become the subjects of Lou Gehrig's disease. Have they ever asked you, Dad, am I going to get it?
That we've talked about it, and what we don't know The heredity part, obviously, I'm not a doctor, but there's probably a greater chance of them getting cancer or something else than that. So I haven't. We've been open on. They never met their grandfather. They know that we're involved with ALS. They've seen the sports. Obviously, is big, especially for the boys. My daughter's 11 and not there yet, but there's a New Orleans Saint, a guy named Steve Gleason, who there was a sports center on, and they've talked about Steve Gleason. Basically, when after Katrina, the Saints had a game, and he was known for blocking a punt, and the Saints won the first game. And so there's been a lot of Steve Gleason involved. They've seen videos on him. There was just I'm a Pearl Jam fan, and Pearl Jam just sent out interviews. Steve Gleason loves the band. He's from Spokane, and sent out on SportsCenter. There was kind of an Eddie Vedder, Steve Gleason interview. Steve was cannot speak, no longer, now has to use the keyboard. And in the interview, they said a lot of things about, Steve is going to leave his children, and they talked about the disease. So they're far more informed, I think, than
you need the ball players, and you need the Eddie Vedders.
Yep.
And you need the Scott Sutherlands and the people who continue to participate in awakening you and your curiosity and your understanding of ALS beyond the fact that Lou Gehrig got it. Barrow, very actively involved in our community and research, and we're glad that you were involved with us on What's It Like on KTAR.com.